So I would like to ask the commission, the PUC people a question. What do you expect Rio Virgin to do if you turn down their $700,000 request from the NUSF fund? How do you propose they would make up that shortfall out of the $1 million they say they are already experiencing as a shortfall annually? What would you tell them if you turn them down? What are you going to tell them they need to do next?
I don't think we would necessarily tell them what to do next. They would maybe have a variety of options there. We may produce a alternative rate structure that would have the necessary rate increases to cover the difference. The company could, in the alternative, they could withdraw their application that they have right now and go back to the rates that they have already, and just basically go back to the way things were. And then there are some other options out there too that I'm sure the company probably knows better than I know about becoming, a different kind of operating entity rather than a regulated public utility like they are now. So there are a variety of options, but certainly we would propose an alternative rate structure to make up those costs. But there are two sides of the coin here too, where they've asked for $1 million basically increase over what they earn now. That's not necessarily what the staff is going to recommend that they should be earning going forward. Staff may have recommendations to lower that amount as well, so that the overall amount, which is the overall amount that they are, the $1 million shortfall that they have now, it might not be $1 million when it comes to staff's opinion. So we would present that case to the commission, would file evidence in the case, and then it would be considered by the hearing officer.
Okay, and I understand that AT&T is in opposition to the Rio Virgin's request for the $700,000.
I don't know that they're in opposition, that they're participating. I don't think we fully know their.
We won't know their official position when and if they file testimony, and that's due on September 30th. Staff and AT&T will file written testimony on September 30th. Then the commission will hold an evidentiary hearing in late October on the 23rd, and then I will take into consideration all the evidence that's presented to me, produce a draft order, submit that for the parties' comments, then all of that is submitted to the commission for their consideration and their vote on the matter.
Has Rio Virgin been eligible to take money out of this NUSF fund in the past? Have they always been eligible to do this?
Just speaking from staff's perspective, I think that that's an issue in the case, whether they're eligible now or.
So it's still not clear whether they're eligible to take.
Well, I mean, that's an issue in the case. I mean, whether they're going to be able to ultimately draw from the fund.
Okay. Have they always been eligible to at least apply?
I believe so.
Yes,
created.
So there are certain fundamental requirements. They involve technical terms, but I can tell you what they are. You have to be what's called.
Only so I understand the terms.
No, I think it's worth explaining. So, at a high level, you have to be what's called a small provider of last resort. So the provider of last resort part means that you have to serve the entire service area. And of course, Rio Virgin is a small company. So, for example, the provider of last resort can't just say, well, I don't want to serve the people in Bunkerville. That's not really part of my business plan. I'm just not going to do that. Right?
Okay.
You have to serve them because they're part of your territory. And so therefore, it doesn't matter how much it cost extra to go over there.
For the record, we like the Bunkerville people.
No, I know. I mean, I'm just saying, and I don't actually know the local dynamics. So I'm
just kidding.
So that's one requirement, is to be a small provider of last resort. Another is to be what's called an eligible telecommunications carrier, which is sort of a federal term that entitles you to at least apply for federal money of certain kinds. And so we receive certain federal subsidies. We don't receive certain other federal subsidies, but the threshold for that is being what we call ETC, or eligible telecommunications carrier. So at the most fundamental level, it's very clear to me at least that Korea Virgin has been in a position, based on those basic criteria, to make an application for the NUSF. I think last year it became clear in a different case that I also worked on for a different company, that the staff would not accept the commission would not accept an NUSF filing in that rate case, a full rate case where the full look at the company takes place. So in light of that precedent, we had to file a rate case, this rate case, in order to then go and draw from the NUSF. So part of the reason why perhaps the simple NUSF filing didn't happen in 2002, when maybe we would have wanted to make the filing, is because this process is quite burdensome to make this kind of a filing, and staff has issued more than 100 data requests to us, so it's a very burdensome process for the company. So it's not something you want to do often, it's not something you want to take lightly. And so, here we are, obviously 2013, and now we've decided to do that. So,
so just to make sure I understand, in order to apply for the NUSF funds, you had to also apply, if you will, for a rate increase.
You had to at least come in and ask the commission to set what's called a revenue requirement. So we wouldn't have had to propose a rate increase. I think we know from other commission precedents that given what our rates are right now, like the residential rate being at, I know you love it, but it's a little low if you look at the national rate. So one of the criteria for NUSF eligibility is that the rate be comparable to rates in urban areas. So an 886 rate is not comparable whether you like it or you don't like it, and that is a fact, more or less. So, part of what's happening here is we tried to make a filing that would address those types of concerns by putting our basic rates in a zone where, in the judgment of this commission, it seems, and in the judgment of the FCC, the customers are contributing a fair amount toward the revenue requirement and not just pushing the entire revenue requirement to a statewide, in this case, funding source. Because the NUSF is paid by ratepayers throughout the state. It's a very small contribution in my judgment, a few cents, but it is nonetheless something that has to be considered. The contribution that comes from the NUSF versus comes from customers. So we felt like it was our obligation to propose some contribution from customers, and that's why you saw some rate increases in this application. But like I said, we hope that there won't be further rate increases as a result of whatever staff proposed.
Okay, I just have one more question for the commission. What are you guys going to help us out with Overton Power District? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any further cards, so unless somebody else wants to go fill out a card, we're going to adjourn tonight. And thank you. Like I said in my answer to one of the questions, the next steps in this case are testimony from the parties in the case, and that's staff and AT&T due September 30th. Then we'll have testimony, what's called rebuttal testimony by the company on October 18th, and then an evidentiary hearing on October 23rd. And then after that point, I will put together a draft order, take the comments of the parties to the case on that draft order, and submit all of that to the commission. We have 3 commissioners who will look at my draft order and vote on that before the end of the year, I believe is the deadline for this case. So those are, that's an overview of the next steps. And with that, we are adjourned.